rearranged the schedule to make room for HR to talk to us about the payroll plan.
Hello, who are you? What do you want?
All right.
All right, thank you. We get everybody up there? Great. So, Mr. Pogue, officially Director of Economic and Community Development, welcome back. We appreciate you coming 2 days in a row. That's above and beyond the call of duty. It's an important topic. We have readjusted our schedule just a little bit because there were so many questions being raised about the pay schedule. So HR is going to be speaking at 6, I believe. So we kind of compressed a few topics, but I will officially turn it over to Mr. Pogue to talk about economic and community development. And as a subset of that, the Chamber of Commerce does the 2030, which sort of fits under that. So if we've brought them all up here together, and I will just let Mr. Pogue begin the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening again. My name is Courtney Pogue. I'm the Director of Economic and Community Development for Metropolitan Nashville, Davidson County. And here with me is the Chamber, so I'll let them introduce themselves. And I know you guys have an event this evening I can't make, but I'll let you guys go first and kind of get on to your dinner.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ralph Schultz. I'm CEO of the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce.
Jeff Height, Chief Economic Development Officer of the Chamber.
Victoria Payne, Vice President of Metro Policy.
Well, we are pleased to be with you tonight to talk about the contract that is a part of the budget submission from the mayor. This is a contract that has existed since 1992 with Metro government, and fundamentally what we do have done over the course of those years is provide economic development services to the city. The benefit of doing economic development with Metro government is the fact that we will also go to the business community and raise private funds to help us generate all of the funds to execute on our P2030 plan, and that plan since 1992 has generated about 533,000 jobs in this Metro region. Most years that would involve about 40 to 50% of the jobs in a given year being created in Davidson County. With me here today is Jeff Height, as you've heard from, who leads our economic development efforts, and Victoria Payne, who can also talk to you about our small business efforts. I would tell you that we have just recently begun or commenced a new 5-year plan on July 1st of last year, intended to create jobs in the community, and with a special emphasis on workforce development. As I think many of you know, one of the most important and significant challenges to continuing to expand our prosperity is the availability of workforce to fill the jobs that are being created in this area. So in general, I would tell you that as we proceed with this plan over the next 5 years, we are focused heavily on workforce development, skill development, creating opportunity jobs, and generating skilled workforce that will be able to fill all of those jobs. So we're happy to answer your questions. Jeff, did you want to add anything to the Victoria? Okay, so I'll just sum up by saying we work with relocating businesses, expanding businesses in Davidson County, and we also work on business retention in Davidson County, all on behalf of Metro government.
Thank you. We appreciate that explanation. Any questions from the council? Councilmember Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is simply this. Why should we continue to give you a subsidy when y'all have shown a complete disregard for this body, for this city, for our democratically elected school board by trying to get the state to dissolve it so that you and the mayor could handpick a new school board? How can you defend that position, that attempt to undermine the will and the voice of the voters of Davidson County.
Well, Councilman, we're making a presentation about the economic development contract. I think that our performance in those duties over these years is strong and positive and beneficial to Metro Nashville. So I'm happy to have a separate conversation with you if you'd like to talk about policy issues, but there is a very clear separation at the chamber between our economic development duties and any other advocacy we take up on behalf of the business community. But I do think if you look at our performance over the years in fulfilling these duties, not only will you see the performance, but you'll see that it is an economically advantageous approach to economic development for Metro Nashville.
Other questions? Councilmember Cash.
Thanks. You gave us a kind of overview. So what you're here to talk about is a contract to do economic development, and you mentioned relocating, expanding, retention, and you also mentioned small business. I'm just wondering if you can go to a little more detail about like the kind of things that you do in those categories of relocating, expanding, and retention that helps the city. Just, like some anecdotes or more specifics.
Yes. Excuse me. So the three components of the contract, project management, business retention and expansion, and then research services. So on the project management component, we will manage 50 economic development projects at any given time at the chamber, and that includes travel to promote Middle Tennessee and Nashville. It is coordinating site visits. It is working with site selection consultants, men and women that advise companies on where, when, and how to relocate and expand. It is marketing the Nashville brand. On the business retention and expansion, we will engage 150 companies on an annual basis to identify any barriers to growth, and then we will try to find the resources to remove those barriers. And then our research support, the mayor's office, council has access to our research team to provide any research that is needed on the economic development front. We have a 8-person economic development team. There are 5 economic developers and 3 researchers. We actually have 10 site selection consultants in town today, and we'll have dinner later tonight as we promote Nashville.
And can you speak, I know I've gotten emails about small business coaching things that y'all do. Can you speak about that?
Absolutely. So technically, small business work that happens at the chamber is not within the bounds of the contract, but we do focus on small business at the chamber. 90% of our membership is small business, and especially during COVID, we opened up a lot of our small business resources to everyone in the community, including non-membership. So we have things such as Business Studio, which are more impactful and helps create networking opportunities in business matchmaking. We have things such as Leadership Connect, so that's small business development for leaders that are growing. We have a Growing Together Women's series focusing on women and minority-owned businesses, and the Small and Diverse Business Forum that helps connects a lot of these women and minority-owned businesses to a lot of the large institutions and large companies and helps kind of bridge that gap. There are a few programs that exist that are starting to dive into a lot of these women and minority-owned businesses and making sure that all of these folks have the necessary materials, the resources, the access that they need to be able to survive. And so just hitting a little bit on some of the impact that we had during COVID-19, we were able to help more than 4,000 business owners and employees through some of the small business and business recovery programs, such as the ones that I've mentioned above, and things like Be a Good Neighbor programming. We had some very specific conversations, and we helped a lot in direct business assistance. So there are many members of the community beyond our membership that were reaching out to us during this time who just needed help connecting to Metro's COVID resources, the state's COVID resources, and helping them understand some of the legal issues, and our Chamber's Research Center was able to help and provide information through that. And so these programs have kind of continued onward, and we do have a slate of small business programs that are expanding continuously each year.
Thank you. Councilmember Hurt.
Thank you very much. So you talked about workforce development and all that you were planning on doing with that. And I know that the $370,000 that you're asking is not going to cover that.
Actually, it's 175.
Right. I mean, but the 175 is not going to cover what it takes in order for you to actually create and implement a workforce development program. So I know that historically Nancy Eisenbrand has worked with the state workforce development. Are you going to continue that relationship? And I had two more questions.
Okay. I'll answer that one if you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Nancy actually does continue to work with our workforce development grants. I think most people here are aware that we received a $7.2 million grant from J.P. Morgan Chase spread over 5 years. Most of that funding is going directly to Metro schools and to Nashville State Community College to create certification, apprenticeship, et cetera, programs. Nancy continues to work with that program in particular.
Okay. Also, I just want to say, we talking about collaborating and working with other Metro departments. Juvenile court is also working with, where the clerk's office is working with a lot of those juveniles and offering apprenticeship programs for them. So I would also lend that as a suggestion for you to coordinate and kind of work with them as well.
We are working directly with Adrian Battle and Shauna Jackson. For instance,
in addition to working with Adrian Battle and Shauna Jackson is what I'm suggesting.
All right.
Thank you. The second thing is that the money that you're asking for the contract, you could call up 10 businesses today and get the money that you're asking on the contract. So I think that the idea of the contract is to keep the relationship that you have with Metro. If that is so, I'd ask that you speak a little bit more on that. And the other thing is that I'd like to have the demographics of your staff.
Well, we're happy to provide the demographics.
I think I ask for it every year, but I'm asking again.
Well, happy to provide it. It's very evident if you come visit our offices what the demographics are, but we will be happy to provide that to you as well. The preceding question was?
Expanding a little bit about the idea of having a contract with Metro because of the purposeful relationship that you have with Metro and not necessarily because of the budgetary matters.
Well,
and I visited the office today, and I just didn't know if there were some places that I didn't see people, so that's why I'm asking.
Well, we're pretty active out in the community, so there are probably people that were gone doing the work. The partnership is and has been important since 1992. There are actual services attached to this contract that we are fulfilling for Metro. They are audited periodically, line item by line item. Previous auditors have concluded that the work necessary to satisfy the contract has been exceeded by the expenditures of the chamber, and we can do that because we get private funding to assist as well. But I will tell you that contract with Metro is important evidence of that public-private contract when it comes to expanding opportunity in the community.
Thank you. Oh.
Just one other thing that I left out. I know the penchant that you have for nonprofit organizations. Are you all working with any, do you have collaborations with any nonprofits?
Oh, a lot of our partners, again, Councilwoman, you know, when we talk about partnership, we're talking about government partnership, private investment partnership, and nonprofit partnership. So whether it's on education with Pencil, or it is with the Urban League, or whoever it may be with, I mean, there's a long list of relationships we have with nonprofits that we're working jointly with. Sometimes they're in the lead, sometimes we're in the lead on a particular issue, but yes, we have, I mean, we have a formal gathering from time to time with the other chambers of this region and Davidson County in particular. So we do a lot of work, whether it's Black Chamber, LGBTQ Chamber. We have strong working relationships there.
Thank you. Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for the work that you do. I'm particularly impressed with the economic development part, the working with small businesses, the workforce development. I think those are very crucial to growth, and those are very important. But as we have that growth, right, those unintended consequences and the hardship that it creates on people that are already here. And so that's the question that I wanted to ask you all, is that as you're inviting businesses here, specifically, do you talk to them about local hires as opposed to bringing their own workforce? Do you talk to them about diversity in their recruitment? Do you also talk to them about housing issues, and what are you doing in those three areas? And then lastly, so there's local hires, diversity, housing, and then policy. I think that for me it's difficult to separate everything else that you do from the policy work, because it does impact it, especially when it comes to the state level policy. Right? And so policy that could actually discourage people from moving to Nashville. So what are the things that you're doing specifically in those areas? We want the growth is good, but we want a growth that does not put burden on our citizens. And I think that conversation needs to start at the recruitment stage as we're talking to this company. So I wanted to know the work that you're doing in those areas. Thank you.
Victoria, you may want to add something here, but I'll just mention a couple of quick things. First of all, the diversity of the community is part of the attraction to the community for many of those businesses that want to be here. So it's definitely a highlight that we offer. Usually it's something about Nashville they don't really realize or don't really know, particularly till they get here. If you look at the 5-year plan that we're happy to share with you, there are three main components of that plan to expand economic prosperity. One of them is livability. In fact, that's the very first. So you will see us engaged in conversation and solution building around housing affordability, education, transportation, and connection to opportunity. And for this 5-year period, particularly child care initiatives. Now, that would be a place where we, again, are working with nonprofits, other nonprofits like the Y and United Way, that are gathering resources to be able to address those kinds of issues. So the other two main sections, workforce development and job creation, are important to us, but that first important step is livability, and that's why you see those 4 priorities identified as something that's important to us. Do you want to add to that?
I will. I'll add a little bit around especially the housing and transportation and childcare piece of it. Many of the businesses that we're interacting with are coming to us saying that those are issues that are very important to them. And so us taking specific actions in those areas are being very supported by the businesses that we're interacting with. And we are learning from them as well creative ways that they're addressing childcare in their own business. They're addressing housing for their employees. They're addressing transportation infrastructure. So we're trying to process and try to understand the best lessons learned from our businesses, as we as well are pushing that message throughout our business community. And so it's a kind of a good back back and forth relationship with a lot of our membership and those who are even outside of our membership.
So I guess what I was trying to ask indirectly is that are these people coming to the table as partners from the get-go as you recruit? So there's so many things that we can offer them and make it easy for them to move. But what can they do as they're coming in? I guess is that conversation happening at the recruitment stage?
Yes, it is. When you think about an outside company moving here versus expanding companies, the majority of job growth comes from existing companies expanding, but the new companies from outside keep Nashville in the global and national headlines. When a company relocates to Nashville, on average, 7 to 12% of their employees, somebody's waving.
I got it, but he'll be next.
So
Finish that thought.
7 to 12% of those current employees come with a relocation. So the majority of hires are from Nashville and Middle Tennessee. For example, Alliance Bernstein, of their 1,200 employees, they moved 225, 230 from New York to Nashville and hired the rest locally. To your first question about involving groups, as we start these conversations with these new companies from outside coming in, we have multiple meetings, multiple visits, and we engage them with all of our partners along the way because they really want to make sure that Nashville is the right choice for them. So they look at housing, transportation, education, infrastructure, workforce, they evaluate all of that. So it's a long process, but we bring everyone in at various stages during that process.
One final comment is that, and I want to build on what you said about the bulk of the growth is for businesses that are here. So do we have any measurement of how businesses in Nashville are doing? Chamber members, not chamber members, because we do hear the business that are closing, but do we have anything that measures that our businesses, local businesses are also growing while they're here, and especially for all the things they're doing for their development, do we measure the impact of those as well?
Well, I can tell you, if you look at the last year, March of 21 till March of 22, the region added 68,000 jobs. Davidson County added 26,000. That's 39%. So the majority of the job growth of the region, almost 40%, is in Davidson County. So that's a good indicator. Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As one of the first-termers here, I certainly want to thank Ralph and the Chamber for the orientation that I was given, and since my time here, when I've had a question or something, always very responsive. Mr. Pogue has been awfully quiet, and I want to give him the opportunity to kind of see if he got the same greeting, has the same relationship. How does it compare with where you've been previously, and are you supportive of the Chamber's request?
And looking at, coming from different cities of Chicago and Dallas and worked in Metro Atlanta, the services being provided by the Chamber are similar. As I kind of alluded to when Jeff and Ralph and Victoria kind of presented, they have a dinner tonight. Well, in Dallas, I actually paid for those dinners. A cost of doing something like when you bring in site selectors and corporate relocation people and corporate real estate people, that is very expensive. That costs about $10,000 by itself. The services to do all the recruiting, to do all the marketing of our community, to do these small business services tied to small business development, entrepreneurship, the programs tied to that. Typically, going back to what I've seen in my previous tracks, those services cost about $100,000 by themselves without the staff. There's typically a research group, which Jeff alluded to. There's 3 or 4 research people. I don't know what you pay them, but I know what I paid my people historically to do research. There's a manager that I paid him about $100,000. There was a research analyst, which I paid about $70,000 without the full load of benefits. So if he has 2 research analysts at $70,000, that's $140,000. A research manager, about $100,000, that's $240,000. The software packages to do all the research, that's another $100,000. And then on top of that, they got your marketing apparatus to do marketing to promote a city, in this case of Nashville. That's another $100,000 for all the dinners, site selectors guild, economics. We just had a conference here back in October, the International Economic Development Conference. We had 2,000 people here. You guys were part of the host committee. I believe you contributed $50,000. How I know that? I'm on the board of IADC, so we didn't contribute as a city, but on behalf of the city, the chamber did. And I believe you did contribute $50,000 in that case, along with putting other money into attracting that conference to Nashville in the state of Tennessee. We did have a slot for the mayor to speak. He was unavailable at that time. Councilmember Suara gave the official welcome at the conference, so in front of about 1,500 people, so thank you for that again. It was well received. So the overall cost of providing economic development services to a city, that can easily eclipse into the $300,000, $500,000 level just for providing the research, the marketing, and the cost of marketing a community. I mean, it's not cheap. It is not an easy task. Then on top of that, look at the other components of the various divisions for economic development, from business attraction, retention, to workforce development, to small business entrepreneurship, to development, redevelopment. Those are the quote-unquote 4 buckets of economic development, and there are costs to that. Right now, that's not the structure that we have. I think historically, the chamber's been our partner. They will continue to be our partner. We look at the cities around the country and how economic development is done. It's always a chamber-city partnership along with the state to make sure that you're marketing the city, the region, and the state. And so those things are what companies are looking for when you promote a city, when you promote a region, and you promote a state.
Thank you. I think that translates to a big yes. Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate that. And with that, I think we can segue into whatever other pieces you want to add just from the general overall umbrella of economic community development. And chamber folks, if y'all have to scoot out at some point to be somewhere, we will excuse you, which might be now, it looks like. Okay. Thank y'all for being flexible on the time and for answering our questions. And there were 2 things you offered to send, and I'll send you a reminder. Thank you very much. Mr. Pogue, you're on your own now.
Thank you. Should I say a few words?
Yeah, if you want to just focus in on your part and specific, I would love to have you speak to your strategic plan as well as whatever else you had on your agenda. So take it away.
Well, good afternoon again, or good evening. Happy to be here. I've been here roughly about a year. Started roughly April 26, 2021. So one of the first things I did when I got here is look at the mayor's policy platform for ECD, which basically has 4 buckets. ECD, or Economic Community Development through Human Capital, which is basically workforce development. We looked at leveraging existing resources, which pretty much entails working with the various chambers, both the Nashville Chamber and, of course, the various small chambers throughout Davidson County, Nashville. And then investing in small businesses, technical assistance and capital, and looking at community and neighborhood investments, particularly in North Nashville and Southeast Nashville, are underinvested portions of Davidson County. From there, I did a number of listening tours throughout the past year, met with a number of community leaders and business leaders throughout Davidson County to get their input and thoughts about economic development, community development, things they want to see in their community. Did some research, utilized a platform called Policy Map, one of those services which I kind of alluded to that, the chamber has access to, but I have access to because I wanted to make sure we can have this data 24/7. That is a very costly platform. It's about $5,000 that I tapped into my own resources to pay for that. And so that's a very costly platform, but it provides real critical data of looking at our zip codes, our census tracts, our areas that we should basically focus our money on and look at ways to improve the quality of life for the citizens of Davidson County, because that is economic development. It is a series of programs and policies that improve the quality of life of people in Davidson County. That is economic development. I think that is the official definition of economic development, and so I think historically we have gotten away from that. And so it was my job to kind of look at ways to, one, address those needs of the community leaders and business leaders, but really look at what are some of the thoughts of those individuals. So I met with the mayor on June 15, 2021, and provided a work plan to senior staff, kind of outlining the things I wanted to focus on for 2021, 2022. Those things entail, one, assigning staff to the North Nashville community. We know that was our most underinvested community in Nashville. We know of areas of youth unemployment that's about 16%. Much greater than what we market as 3% for Davidson County. We know we have a higher unemployment rate overall, about 9.9% in that area. So we want to really have a person to be on the ground, boots on the ground, to really address the needs of the community, to make sure they were interacting with the businesses, but also those churches, those community leaders, those neighborhood businesses on a daily basis. And so that person was able to really gather a lot of data and really help us kind of shape out a program, particularly in the creation of the Nashville Small Business Recovery Fund, which allowed us to utilize a good points of data, but also allowed us to utilize the community input in creating that program. And so we also want to look at ways to provide training and resources for staff in a sense of understanding economic development, but also getting them more engaged in the sense of real estate development. So there's a program out there called Project REAP, which is the real estate apprenticeship program. They were looking at coming to Nashville, having Nashville as a beachhead. So was able to, one, solidify that investment in Nashville by Project REAP to get more African Americans and minorities into commercial real estate. So they did sub shop here, and I'm happy to say they have partnered with Amazon and made Nashville an official city of Project REAP to get more African Americans and minorities into commercial real estate. We also looked at secured resources for our first first economic development plan. So I thank this body once again, providing the $1.1 million for the creation of the first economic development plan for Nashville. That is ongoing. It's actually open procurement right now. And so I thank the mayor and thank the council for actually supporting that. This is to be our first plan. And creating a plan, it allows the city to benchmark ourselves and really look at ways to make sure that the rising tide does lift all boats in Nashville, in the sense of providing resources and focus on key industries from healthcare to technology to logistics to hospitality, and also look at ways of supporting other industries which are growing here, such as entertainment, film, and music, and how is the best ways of structuring and supporting these endeavors going forward. The Small Business Recovery Fund, $20 million, so thank you again for supporting that. That was one of the things that came out of the listening tours and looking at some of the data points that we were able to gather from both staff and some of the databases out there, and working with our various partners to understand that what we're seeing in Nashville, and especially in pockets of North Nashville, but also in pockets of East Nashville, there have been a number of increasing business business vacancies over the past year, particularly in East Nashville. We're seeing an increase of business vacancy between 25 and 30%. So that is something to be concerned about. So hopefully with this fund, we can help some of those businesses pivot. Ooh, there we go. Pivot and kind of weather the storm in light of what's happening with the current economic environment, but also the previous economic environment. Help those businesses kind of get back on their feet, so we're not reading about those additional closures, because yes, the Alliance Bernsteins, the Amazons, the Assurians of the world, yes, they are they make the newspapers, but it's those small mom and pop businesses that really are Nashville. They really help tell the story of Nashville, and we really don't want to see them close their doors. We don't see them, not hire people or lay off people. So we want to put the resources into them to help them really weather the storm and really come out of this pandemic and recession, well, hopefully not a recession, in a better light going forward. So one of the things I also was able to do last year, when IADC came here, had their conference here, it was about 2,500 people. IADC and International Economic Development Council had a mandate of supporting Black-owned banks. And so being a board member of IADC, I encouraged them to look at Citizens Bank and Trust to make an investment with our depository dollars. With that request, they were able to contribute $100,000 certificate of deposit to Citizens Bank and Trust to help them balance their demand deposits with the bank, but also look at ways of investing that capital in North Nashville where it's sorely needed. We also look at working with our various partners from the Chamber, which you just heard from, but also the Nashville Business Incubation Center and the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center. So we were able to really increase our partnerships and relationships going forward, and we're looking to do that going forward in the future. So people ask who's on first when it comes to economic development here in Nashville. When it comes down to business retention and attraction and expansion, it's really the Chamber and our state partners who really focus on the large corporate and mid-sized corporate entities here in Nashville who are looking to come here or be here. From small business development, we work with our SBA and the small business development centers and the local chambers. We also had historically there was a small business program that was funded roughly about $150,000. I think in this year's budget, it's actually been increased to $500,000 to support pretty much two programs on their small businesses, a cash grant program, along with the property incentive program tied to small businesses. And then, of course, we have the $20 million of ARPA dollars being utilized for the Small Business Recovery Fund. And we have for workforce, we have various partners to help us coordinate our workforce efforts here in Nashville. And you previously heard from Development and Redevelopment. That's really more or less the MDHA, Metropolitan Development Housing Authority, because the bulk of the tools for development and redevelopment are tied to MDHA in the form of TIFs and pilots, along with the Community Development Block Grant dollars. And then you have the Industrial Development Board, which oversees some of our private activity bonds and some of the cash grants, which we have not done a cash grant since 2019. So I guess I'll open it up for questions. I see some of you are very anxious, so I'll...
Appreciate that information, and I will go to Councilmember Hurt first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Polk, my question basically is, are you going to have the resources that it takes in order to implement the plan that you are preparing? Historically, we've had studies and plans and plans and studies, and oftentimes they sit on the bookshelves and they never get truly implemented. And also, I want to know what your engagement will be with the Fisk Innovation and Incubation Center that is also being created.
I'm hopeful that we will be able to really implement the plan. Before I came here today, I looked at some of the previous tapes of other budget eco sessions, much like this one, in which you ask the same question. I think it's bringing an outside consultant in to look at our strategy for economic development. It's really a pathway to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, in the sense that we want to make sure that you're being heard, your constituents are being heard, the businesses are being heard, and that we're creating the right plan, the right structure. I know people have asked me, what is the right structure? I probably could tell you, but is that really fair to you, the citizens, and the businesses here in Nashville? I don't think so. So I think it's more of an exercise that in bringing on a consultant and doing an actual plan to figure out what is the right structure for economic development here in Nashville. And how do we best look at having a plan in which we're not repeating the same questions from 4 years ago, which you asked that same question 4 years ago.
Right, but so my thing is that instead of putting the money into an external consultant, we provide that money to you because you have the knowledge and the experience to do it, because if someone were else in that position and we had to get an external consultant, we most likely would get you. So since you know it, we save that money and put it into a tangible use for you to really help build the ecosystem as what you did with Citizens Bank and some of the neighborhood nonprofits and businesses to see things develop and become better. Because when you see that, then people will start to realize that it can happen.
Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Pogue. Thank you for all that you've been able to do. But my question is this, I think, because your presentation followed what part of what the Chamber is saying about developing businesses that are already here and helping them to grow, and that's what you've been able to do. So my question to you is that, is there enough outreach? Because some of what you've shared, even I did not know about them. Which probably could be my fault, but I'm trying to say that how do we get the message out that all of this great work is happening and get more businesses to take advantage of it?
Well, I guess I'll look at my various colleagues over to my left, my right. I guess we're getting staffed up. We have a communications director, so information about what we're doing in the office will be better disseminated. And it's not just Nashville. I think a lot of cities don't do a good job of telling their own story. I think you have heard from me over the past year that we don't tell our story good enough. And that's just not Nashville. And it comes to economic development, we look at the big picture stuff, what's sexy, but we don't tell about the nuts and bolts of the investments in Citizens Bank or the small business that hired 3 or 4 people or the business that's on the street that's opened up. That's not making the headlines. That's what it comes down to, having that communications apparatus and having the email blast to inform you and constituents about what we're doing on a regular basis. So we need to do a better job of doing that, and hopefully I'll get with Christian and the Chief of Staff about looking at better ways of promoting what we do and what we have done historically and how we should tell our story for economic development. And so one of the things in bringing on a consultant for the actual plan, it's about a multitude of things. One, we want to make sure we're benchmarking ourselves against other cities. I think historically we have not benchmarked ourselves against other cities, the Atlantas of the world, or Seattle's, or Phoenix, or Portland's, and how they approach economic development, not just in the sense of corporate attraction or corporate retention, but also the sense of equitable platforms, but also inclusion. What are some of the best policies and programs we should look at? What are some of the best strategies we should look at for key industries? How how should we support the entertainment industry? Our peer cities support the entertainment industry, but how are they doing it in comparison to what we're doing here in Nashville? And so that's why we're looking at someone to come in to provide the benchmarking and looking at best practices and looking at what is the right staffing levels, what is the actual right apparatus. Is it a role within the mayor's office? Is it a separate department? Is it a public-private partnership? So that's something that, could we answer that question in one day? I don't think that's fair to you. I don't think that's fair to the citizens of Nashville. But is it done throughout an exercise over a 9 to 12 month period? I think you can have something which people are proud of and say they have been fully engaged and involved in that process by having open dialogue and being fully transparent about the overall process.
I just want to add, thank you. With COVID and everything, we know that small businesses has been hit a lot, and so anything that we're doing to continue to build those businesses up and to let the citizens know what is available and what we're doing, I think is going to help overall. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one question I would like to add. I'm excited about the strategic plan because I think there are times when we think we just want to tell businesses to come here, but we haven't thought through which ones or why, and that's exactly what you're going to be asking the question of. We also added into that resolution that while that consultant was asking people questions, they would also formally ask what are our values and what things are important to us, like the music industry or affordable housing or childcare. Is that getting written into the contract? Is that a part of the question asking that will happen?
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about open procurement, but
within what you can say.
But I believe that, as you alluded to within the actual resolution, community values, and those entities that responded to the RFP were aware of that.
Great.
They are fully aware of that. And as we move along in this process, I'm sure that almost 100% certain that they will have that incorporated into their overall strategy.
Awesome. I think that's a huge piece of that. We are, I see HR back there ready to give us information on the questions we've been asking. Are there any other questions for Mr. Pogue, who was nice enough to come back for a second day, which we really appreciate?
I'm a glutton for punishment.
If we think of questions, we can email them to you, and you can send answers to Director Darby, who will put them on the council budget resource page. We thank you so much, and council members, if y'all will sit tight, we have asked so many questions about the payroll and vacant positions that Director Shannon Hall has very nicely agreed to come and spend the dinner hour with us, maybe not the whole hour, and just explain the process they went through and then answer our many questions. So we will send economic development on your way. Maybe you can catch the end of that dinner and invite up